Hello and very warm welcome to all of you in this edition of Public Forum. We are going to talk about today Prime Minister Narendra Modi's address to annual UN General Assembly session, one of the most important platforms to raise the global issues. Prime Minister Modi addressed the 75th session of UNGA on Saturday. Mr. Modi spoke on the wide-ranging issues like sustainable development, terrorism, climate change, COVID and global peacekeeping efforts. He said that the stability in the UN and empowerment of the world body are essential for the welfare of the world. He also questioned for how long will India, the world's largest democracy and home to 1.3 billion people, be kept out of the decision-making structures of the UN. So we are going to discuss that what does one make out of the content of the PM speech, and he did not take the name of China directly or Pakistan, which is quite rattling both the countries, or we can say the mandarins of both the countries. We are going to discuss all these things in this edition of Public Forum. And joining me for the discussion, former ambassador and diplomat Neeraj Srivastav. Very warm welcome to the show, Neeraj ji. And my second guest is Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, international affairs expert. Very warm welcome to the show, Professor Chaulia. Professor Chaulia, your take on, your response about when he spoke on many things, but one of the important things that grabbed the media's attention, that he questioned for how long India will be kept out of the decision-making structure. And in fact, he said that 1945 was different. It is 2020.
Yeah, Anurag, this is the 75th anniversary year. So I think retrospective is necessary, and many world leaders, including Prime Minister Modi, made some critical references. In fact, the UN Secretary General himself was very self-critical, Antonio Guterres. And I think he said something like, we have essentially failed on the coronavirus. He admitted it. And then Emmanuel Macron of France was saying UN is at the risk of impotence. And of course, Prime Minister asked, how long can we be kept out? So many people, I think world leaders took this opportunity to highlight the fact that it may be a celebration of sorts, 75 years. But the fact is that there's a lot of work to be done in terms of reform and change. Yeah. So I think, and we have been the biggest champion for this reformed multilateralism concept. So I think Prime Minister took this opportunity to lay out the case one more time at the biggest global stage. He was mentioning, what proportion of the world's population, what percentage of the world's of the GDP. He was essentially reminding people that without India at the high table as a permanent member in the Security Council, this is not really international community. What are we talking about? People still refer to the UN as international community, but it's not. So there is a problem there. And I think he also, in a way, gave the cues to our non-permanent seat that is coming up. India has been elected for a non-permanent 2-year seat in Security Council starting January 2021. And this is almost after 10 years that we are coming back to the horseshoe table in the Security Council. So I think some of the priorities, the enemies of humanity point you raised, very important. He was quite blunt about it, and I think that's necessary. In fact, that's showing the new India, because in the past we used to be a little bit cautious in directly critiquing the system and its failures. But here we were clearly saying that in fact Ambassador Tirumurthy, our ambassador there, mentioned after PM speech that our priority starting January when we are in the Security Council is going to be to ensure that this is not going to be misused by promoters of terrorism or their allies. So there is a clear indication that terrorism, counter-terrorism will be our top agenda item there, and PM highlighted that without taking the names of these undeserving countries. But nonetheless, it was, I think, our priority. Then, of course, the vaccine, as Ambassador was mentioning, PM is very good at marketing India's strengths, on the world stage, and he did that. People don't forget. People always think of India as a poor country and that the corona cases are growing and deaths are growing. But what they don't realize is we are also the largest vaccine manufacturer in the world, So I think those are some of the things where he assured the international community. So yes, multilateralism in crisis, PM himself acknowledged that. But on the other hand, he's saying that we can, revive it, with India being one of the pillars or one of the leaders pushing for a different form of multilateralism that is fairer, more equitable, and as you said, concurrent with the realities of 2020, not of 1945. So I think, and one of the points, Anurag, that you also mentioned is, even though he was critical of the UN and its performance and its effectiveness, at the same time he said, we cannot throw the baby out with the bath water. We have to preserve this. We have to make this a better instrument for global good. And the best point of all, in my view, was his repeated insistence that India does not act for self-interest. Whatever we do, be it in our neighborhood, Act East, Indo-Pacific, vaccine, all kinds of assistance programs, or even domestic welfare schemes, everything is for the greater good of humanity. See, that is the message that a world leader wants to hear, because India is stepping up for greater responsibilities, and we are showing ourselves as a responsible power, not as a greedy or a rapacious power like China, which of course PM, like Ambassador was mentioning, PM obliquely critique, because in the name of doing good, what they're doing is they're spreading hegemony. But PM is saying, in the name of doing good, India does not spread hegemony. India actually is working with the idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or the world as one family. So I think it was a mixture of realism and liberalism, to put it in a very theoretical way. And that is the right way going forward. We want power, we want influence, but we are a responsible state. I think that is the big message.
Professor Chaulia, as rightly said by Ambassador Srivastav, and you also used this word, the Prime Minister were rather blunt in asking about the change, the structural changes of the UN. But as far as our enemies of the humanity is concerned, he did not take the name of China and Pakistan. On the other hand, Imran singled out India in his UNGA speech by claiming that it was the only one country that states sponsors Islamophobia, in fact. So how do you differentiate between the two leaders, well, in terms of their message to the world community?
Yeah, Anurag, firstly, I think Narendra Modi was on one side, and Imran Khan and Tayyip Erdogan, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the president of Turkey, were on the other side. And these two made like rabid Islamist type of propaganda and misused the platform of the UN General Assembly for doing that, and spreading, misinformation and hatred of India. But on the other hand, I think Prime Minister decided, and this is not new, also in previous occasions also he has done this, to simply ignore these chatterboxes who look for the earliest opportunity to scream that Kashmir and that Islam is in danger, and those kind of fake claims. So what he instead did was, I think, stay at a higher level of discourse. And because you see, the UN is such a system. There are 193 member states, and often there are some countries that come with the axe to grind. They have only single point agenda to criticize a neighbor or to criticize some country with whom they have a dispute. And this is essentially it's a big multilateral forum where people are looking for shared ideas and convergence, not for washing your dirty linen against your neighbors in front of the whole world. So I think that's the difference, you see, between a Turkey and a Pakistan on one side and India, because these countries have become single point agenda nations. They don't really contribute much to the regional or global public goods. So that's why I think PM thought that we should emphasize our net security provider, net provider of health, first responder in healthcare. Right now the whole world is more concerned about those issues. So I think it was strategically a right choice because it resonates better. And if you look at Africa, you look at most of Latin America, they are least bothered about Kashmir. Nobody cares about. For them, it's a non-issue. What matters for them is, the pandemic. What matters for them is the economic recovery. Now, PM was talking about how India will, once the pandemic subsides, we are going to again be an engine for global growth. This is an important thing that matters to 192 countries or 191 countries, minus these, two fundamentalist nations like Turkey and Pakistan. So what I think we need to do is to keep our eye on the big picture, especially in these kind of forums. We did give a strong rebuttal to the Pakistanis at the lower level. One of our junior diplomats gave a right to response before the PM spoke on another day. And that's okay, that's a routine thing. And we issue a statement, we condemn all, and we refute the Pakistani allegations. But Prime Minister, you see, a Prime Minister who is a statesman and who wants to be seen to be providing solutions for global problems, he's not going to stoop so low as the ones who are taking cheap shots at us, like Erdogan or Imran. So I think the message went. And by the way, our diplomacy, we are also, as you know, working very hard in the OIC framework, and many Muslim majority countries have started distancing themselves from Pakistan and from Turkey. So we will find a way to counter them, but not at this kind of a grand stage. At this grand stage, the best side of India should be out in front, up front, which was our leadership role in the world. So I think that was the right way. By ignoring them, we actually, like you said, we are actually rattling them, because they love so-called internationalization of these issues.
Okay.
The more
if I ask you the short answer, short response from
sentence,
what
the
he
more
said.
it is internationalized. So we are happy like this, just ignore them and leave aside their rants.
Okay, one more quick response from you. I mean, when he says that this is a need of the hour to reform the response in the process of the world government, the global body. I mean, this is not the first time that any leader has said about the reforms of the UN. But it seems that probably it's not happening. How do you think that probably the time has come and the other world players, including India, would somehow pressurize and would be instrumental for the change?
Anurag, it's a well-known fact that in Security Council, among the 5 permanent members, it's only China that is ambivalent, ambiguous, or at sometimes plainly obstructive of India's permanent membership. If there was a vote in General Assembly, and if there is a full unanimity in Security Council, we can make it. But the problem is that, there's this one country, China, that's been, holding us to ransom on this question. Also, the nuclear suppliers group question. So these kind of things, permanent seat, I mean, we have to be very clear as to who is the obstacle. Yeah. And I don't think Prime Minister needs to do that, but at various forums, we need to mobilize more countries around to our viewpoint. I think when we have the non-permanent seat for 2 years from January in the Security Council, we will use that to try and shape a deeper consensus on reform. Because right now, as you know, it is the process itself is debated. It's not about who will get it or who not. How to even move forward. There was some text-based negotiation that came up a few years ago. Now again it is frozen. There are all these regional blocks. So it's a mess. But we are not waiting for this, and nor are we leaving aside our response. I think that was the PM's larger point, right? Even if this institution is frozen, even if it is like a dinosaur and it is not progressing, we have other means. We have regional, we have bilateral partnerships, plurilateral engagements with smaller groups of countries. And even if the large group multilateralism is not working, we are moving ahead. And I think that is the big message, because we have got other forums like G20, BRICS, and many others, through which, the India's leadership of multilateralism will progress. Nevertheless, we are not going to be, permanently waiting in limbo. Rather, we are active and we are going to be more proactive. I think that's the message.
Okay, that's very, very, very rightly said. Thank you very much, Professor Chaulia. Thank you very much, Ambassador Srivastava, for joining me and talking to me. That's all we have in this edition of Public Forum. Thank you very much for watching.